Good day, internet people. It's Jess here, and today I'm going to have a little look at my Shadow Paladin deck for you all and give a few thoughts. So, as you're probably already aware, it is a Force clan, so you want your Force markers for this clan. I like to put stickers on mine if I can find stickers that are suitable, so that's something I do like to do. So, let's have a look at the deck. Obviously, starter, only one option. It's full bow, your standard starter. I'm going to just twist the camera down so it's down there. Crotch shot, right. Yeah, full bow, pretty standard. Move that over there. We run 4 perfect guards, which is Dark Shield Maclear. I'm going to zoom out slightly. There we go. Standard draw PG because it's awesome. I run 2 Howl Owls. I've always been a big fan of draw triggers. I think they're always nice to get on a damage check, and they run a secondary purpose in this particular deck as being something the main can call out without really any loss to the deck, and you can just search it out for sacking for later skills. And we run 4 heals because why wouldn't you? And finally, 6 critical triggers. So it's 6 draw, 6 crit in this particular build. I don't think you need to run more than 6 personally, because the deck does generate its own crit, and you kind of want to go around that way of doing it. Onto grade 1s. I run 4 Black Sage Sharon, or Charon, however you like to pronounce it, maybe even Karen. Really useful grade 1. So it's an 8k with a 10k shield, and when it's placed as an effect of a card, basically via something like Dark Dictator or Bad Abkar or Maka, you can basically Soul Blast 1 to countercharge 1, and this unit gets +3 until the end of turn. So its main job is basically for countercharging. Yes, it's a Soul Blast each time, so you can't always do it very often. But yep, it's a very useful card, and having 4 of those is basically, I think, the way to go. I run 2 of these, Blaster Dagger. Now this could potentially be swapped for Nightmare Painter. As I was saying about the Soul, Nightmare Painter is a grade 1 that Soul charges when placed, basically, so that's something that I'm considering running instead of this guy, but this guy's a nice bit of on-hit pressure. Basically, when his attack hits, or attack hit boosted hits a Vanguard, you can put it into the Soul to make your opponent choose one of his or her units and retire it. So it's not necessarily going to go off much, but it definitely does pressure the opponent, and then if you think it's worth using, then certainly it's not bad to have lying around. I run 4 Skull Witch Nemain. So she's a 5k grade 1, so on the surface she doesn't seem particularly great, but she is, because you can just tap her or rest her to search out another grade, well, doesn't even say grade 1, just a card with 5,000 power, call it to the open rear guard and shuffle your deck. But you can only use this ability once per turn, even if you've got multiple units that have this skill on the field. You can only do it once per turn. But yep, it helps you fill the field. If you get one of these in your opening hand, you can start really filling the field very quickly by chaining the mains each turn. And like I say, you can call out the Howl Owl as well if you want to. So those are basically there to fill the field and be used as sacrifices. And at the end of the grade 1 lineup, I run 3 Blaster Javelin. Blaster Javelin is pretty nice. He's kind of like your Allen and your Marin type of skill. Basically, when placed, if you have 2 or more grade 1 or less rear guards, that includes himself, so it only has to be 1 other, basically. You can counterblast 1, draw a card, and this unit gets +3 until the end of turn. Pretty nice. You can superior call this with something like Maka or Bad Abkar as well, which is often quite a nice way to get cards back in the hand if you're finding yourself a little bit on the ropes. Onto the grade 2 lineup, I run 3 Blaster Rapier. So she is a 9k, so that's kind of her downside. When she attacks a Vanguard, if you have 3 or more units with Blaster in the card name, she gets +4k until the end of that battle, which sort of makes up for the low base power. And when it hits a Vanguard, you've got the on-hit pressure, counterblast 1 to make your opponent choose a rear guard and retire it. So I've been considering swapping her with Blaster Axe, who is the 10k vanilla, which is a tempting one to use because obviously if you've got a 10k vanilla, you've got a 10k shield there, and it's still pretty decent. However, I like the on-hit pressure of this again, a bit like the Blaster Dagger. Your opponent, when they see this coming towards them, they do tend to want to guard that because they don't want to lose any more rear guards that they've already potentially going to be losing with Phantom Blaster. If they've got 4 rear guards down, they don't want this to go off, basically, or even less, really, but you know what I mean. Yes, she's 9k, so you don't necessarily want to ride her. However, it's pretty easy in this deck to get 3 or more Blaster units on the field. That does include your Vanguard, so Phantom Blaster Overlord does do the job for that as well. And the back row is often going to have some Blaster in there, unless you've just got a full field of the main. Also, in the Grade 2 lineup, we've got 4 Darkness Maiden Maka, and that beautiful Origin rare which Lena got on Sunday for me. So, she is activated once per turn, Counterblast 1, choose a grade 1 or less card from your hand, call it to rearguard, draw a card, and she gets +5 until the end of turn. So she's a 15k, superior call, and draw a card thing. So, pretty nice. Can't really go wrong with her. Again, you want to chain into the Charon, which basically then unflips the damage. So you're gaining +8 overall and a card in hand for essentially a Soul Blast, which is pretty fun. So, yep, definitely want to have Maka in your deck. And to round off the Grade 2 lineup, it's 4 of the trial deck card, Blaster Dark. So he's got 2 skills. The first skill is just when he's placed, you can counterblast 1 to make your opponent retire a unit of their choice, which is pretty nice. I mean, if that goes off, then it's brilliant. You don't always necessarily want to use the counterblast for it, so it's a bit circumstantial. His other skill is just on the Vanguard circle. When your opponent has no rear guards, you can discard a card from your hand to give this unit drive +1 until the end of turn. Your average player that you fight against will probably know about this and call down extra units on their grade 1 turn just to stop you getting that twin drive off. But that's not necessarily a bad thing because that will thin their hand. So if they have to throw down extra resources to stop you doing a skill that you might not necessarily have done anyway if you didn't want to ditch something from your own hand, then it works out pretty decent that they've just, you know, made it easier for you to get through their shield potentially. So I like that. I like Blaster Dark. He is your main ride target, obviously. Onto the grade 3s, I run 2 Dark Mage Badabkar. Badabkar is really good on the Vanguard and Rearguard. Obviously, he's got the gift as well. You can Soul Blast 1 to look at the top card of your deck, call it to the Rearguard, or put it into the drop zone. If you called it, the unit gets +5 until the end of turn, and at the end of that turn, retire that unit. So you can get yourself an attacker for the turn, or you can get yourself some Phantom Blaster fodder. If you get yourself a Charon out of it, then you get essentially a +8 just on the Charon because it's getting the +5 from this and the +3 from his own skill, and you can countercharge, so that's a pretty nice combo. It can get you a Maka, it can get you a Blaster Javelin, which can get you another draw out of it. It can combo off pretty well, so I run 2 of those. You don't really want it to be your ride target, you want it on the rear guard really. I run 3 Dark Dictator. This is a nice ideal first ride. Like the original Alfred back in the day, he gets +2 for each of your rear guards. And you can counterblast 1, activated once per turn, call a grade 2 or less from your hand, that unit gets +5, and your opponent has to choose one of his or her rear guards and retire it. That's quite a big plus for a single counterblast, so not too bad. And again, because it's a superior call, it triggers Charon, or you can go into Javelin or something, make it into counterblast 2, and you've drawn a card back and gained a bunch of power. There's some nice things that you can combo off that with, so he's a pretty good card. And finally, the PSD resistance, as they say. It's Phantom Blaster Dragon. There's the beautiful SVR version. So, his skills, he's got counterblast 1, retire 3 rearguards. Your opponent chooses 3 of his or her units, which is technically rearguards, and retires them. And he gets +15 and a crit until the end of turn. So, not too bad. I mean, you can use your mains and your Badabkars easily fill your own field in order to get that off, and your opponent has to choose 3 of their units. So it's a 3 for 3 for a counterblast of 1, plus the 15k and a crit, which is going to force the opponent to use a perf, basically. They don't want to take this big smack to the face. So you don't necessarily want to put your force counters on this guy, because your opponent's going to want to be guarding it anyway. If they've got a perf, they've got a perf. If they haven't, they're going to have to throw down loads of cards, even if it's not got any force on it, because it's still going to be swinging for 28 and a crit before boost. So that's always pretty nice, because they're going to allocate potentially another 20k for triggers, potentially maybe 25 to make it a no pass. So that's pretty good. And his other skill, if you've got a grade 3 in the soul, and you've got your opponent's got no rear guards basically, and they've got 4 or less cards in the damage zone, you can basically just soul blast that grade 3 to deal the damage. Pretty nice. If you've done that skill, you might have to do the top skill twice if they've got a full field, or if they're an Excel clan. But for most cases, I think, if you call a Blaster Dark as well on the same turn, you might counterblast 1 for a Blaster Dark, and then use his skill to kind of get rid of the other 3 units, depending on how their field's looking. Against stuff like Pale Moon, you might find a lot of their stuff's gone back into the soul anyway, so certain clans are obviously more susceptible to this than others. However, the dealing of damage thing is always a very nice skill. Now, it does let triggers go off, so if they get themselves a draw trigger, that can be problematic. However, it's worth the risk, in my opinion, especially if they're on 4, puts them to 5, then they absolutely have to guard. They can't take any attacks. And the only issue with him really is if you use his top skill, it can leave you with an empty field, and it can be a struggle to replace it. So that's why you do want your things that can draw you cards, like your blaster javelins and your bad up cards and whatever, that can fill the field back up without necessarily having to do it from the hand. So he's a good card, but he does have to be used a little bit more carefully than something like Draconic Waterfall. And obviously there is no guard restrict, so if they've got a perfect guard, it doesn't matter how much power you pump onto this guy, because they're going to perfect guard it easily anyway. It's not going to be a threat. It's the one thing Shadow Paladin kind of doesn't have right now, is the kind of guard luck. But we might see that in future support anyway, we don't know yet. But yeah, that's Vanguard Blaster Dragon, and that's my Shadow Paladin trial deck. The pimped out Shadow Paladin deck. So there are certain options which would be tempting to put in, like I say, Nightmare Painter, Blaster Axe. There's probably other units as well which I could consider and would be perfectly viable choices. I think Shadow Paladin has some pretty nice options, but perhaps more so than certain other clans. However, let me know what you think in the comments down below of my deck. If you're running this deck yourself or you want to build it, post that down below as well. I would say, if you are planning on building this deck, hope that you've got deep pockets, because it's probably one of the most expensive decks you can build in Standard right now, because there's so many triple rares in this particular deck. You've got Nemain, Charon, Maka, then you've got your double rare lineup, and your Phantom Blaster Dragons. You're looking at a good £25 each if you have the regular versions. So it's not a pocket money deck, but for those who can put the money in or get lucky with their pulls, they will find themselves rewarded by playing this, I believe. So there you go. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again very soon, and have a nice day. Bye, Internet people.